Hi friends, let's talk about the secret to losing weight for good. And it starts with 10 simple ways that are the core principles of success to nourish your body and satisfy your brain. So number one is to eat foods with acetic acid with every meal. Acetic acid does two things. Number one, it dampens the high dopamine that you get from eating the foods that you're addicted to. Now, if you can reduce the dopamine surge in response to unhealthy comfort foods, then your brain won't feel deprived. Now, dopamine is a hormone that gets secreted every time you do something pleasurable. And whether you are spending quality time with your loved ones, scrolling on your phone, or eating your favorite junk food, dopamine gets secreted. And dopamine helps you build habits, be it good or bad. So added sugar is a powerful dopamine driver. Most sugar in nature is trapped in fibrous foods like an apple or banana, and not in the form of apple juice or banana ice cream or banana bread, which are processed sugary foods that are powerful dopamine drivers. You have 5 innate taste sensations: sweet, sour, salty, umami, and bitter. In nature, sweet things give you energy like fruit. Salty things balance your electrolytes. Umami flavors give you protein to grow. But to protect you from toxins, bitter and sour tells you to stay away, as most of us instinctively have aversions to bitter and sour foods. As in the wild, bitter foods are toxic and sour foods in nature are rancid and poisonous. That's why fermented foods may not always work out. Sugar is the most powerful of all the 3 pleasurable tastes and the last taste sensation to leave as you grow older. And when people get sick, everything simply tastes bitter, and that's how they lose weight. They lose their appetite. And this may be a defensive mechanism. So you can take these principles and add acetic acid, which by the way is in vinegar, to retrain your brain, because it won't get as much pleasure from the same amount of food since it dampens the dopamine levels. But you're still going to get some dopamine because you haven't changed your diet. And this is why your brain doesn't just outright revolt. Many people can't just cut out the sugar, salt, and umami cold turkey because their brain will protest and it will make you seek more. It's like trying to take a toy away from a toddler who's been playing with the toy every day. That toddler will not let you take it without protesting and probably will be in a fit of rage. And learning to eat vinegar can help you avoid sugar withdrawal symptoms like irritability and cravings and make your brain go into a fit of rage. Balsamic vinegar is actually one of my favorite, and you can use it as a vinaigrette on your salads. But don't just limit it to salads. Dip your breads and your snacks in it, drizzle it on top of your entrees. But don't drink it. When you drink it, you are losing the opportunity to pair it with your food and to blunt that dopamine drive. Besides, you may erode your food pipe because vinegar is pretty acidic. And the added bonus is that you can help reduce your blood sugars and your weight. I vividly remember my parents telling me how healthy vinegar was, but I refused to eat it until I learned that vinegar actually increases AMP kinase, an enzyme that curbs appetite, reduces total cholesterol, improves blood sugar, and reduces insulin resistance. And 2 teaspoons with every meal is the target. Now, even vinegar consumed at night can lower blood sugars in the morning. So if you are on diabetic medications, don't forget to check with your doctor on how you should cut back on your medications. As an added bonus, it can actually help you reduce the bacteria content in your food to reduce food poisoning. Have you noticed the amount of recalls in foods? Now, I prefer to add balsamic vinegar because I want those powerful anthocyanins that comes with that color. Now, number 2 is going to sound too simple to be powerful, but words are very powerful. So don't tell yourself you're going to go on a diet. Diet is such a negative word. And if you've already tried several diets, there is already some negative feelings associated with the word diet that usually refers to a temporary eating pattern. But if you want to set yourself up for success, then don't think of it as something temporary. Think of it as building a lifelong pattern of eating and aim for a long-term goal of where you want to see yourself in a year from now. This is much more practical and less stressful than trying to change your lifetime habits in 2 weeks. The brain doesn't like rapid change, but if you just change the name, the brain is more willing to accept something new to try. And many successful brands have changed their name to signal to their employees and to their customers that the company now has new goals and a new mindset. And there's also something about the idea of not eating certain foods that makes people crave for more food. A diet oftentimes means there are certain foods that are off limits. And I know when I'm told I can't eat something, all I do is think about eating it and how it would taste in my mouth and whether the food is sweet or sour or soft or crunchy. This happens all the time when I walk by samples at Costco. But it's easy for me to continue to walk and to walk away from those samples because I can literally carry my physical body away. But that can't happen at home. And I know it really feels like torture struggling not to eat when the brain desires the food, because the brain will secrete hormones like dopamine to make you lust and want it even more. Sometimes you may feel your heart racing, or you may be breathing quicker because the brain causes a rise in epinephrine and norepinephrine, two hormones that activate the body's fight or flight response. In response to this stress, cortisol will increase, which elevates your blood sugars, your insulin levels, and suppresses your immune system. And all this happens without eating any food because thoughts are that powerful. The brain does not want to feel deprived. And that's why simply changing the words from I'm on a diet to I'm on a journey of health can make a huge difference in preventing the feelings of deprivation that comes with the negative word diet. So that's why number 3, it's powerful to get prepared. Be prepared by making a list and buying that list of foods that you like and know are healthy to eat so that you can add them to your foods that you eat daily and crowd out the foods that you know aren't so healthy. The list should include healthy foods that you can enjoy eating multiple times a day. You know, I love red cabbage, garbanzo beans, and walnuts. But if you aren't there yet, that's okay. Find healthy foods that you like and make a list of 10 foods every week. There are over 300,000 healthy whole foods to eat. And the more you think about healthy foods, the easier it is for your brain to focus on trying new foods instead of being fixated and worrying about giving up the comfort foods that you're so used to. What you're doing is basically distracting your brain without making it feel bad. Have you ever had to break up a fight over a toy between two toddlers? If all you did was talk to them and explain why they should share, it doesn't always go very far most of the time. But instead, it's easier to distract them, to get them to play a brand new game together, and oftentimes they don't even want the original toy they were fighting over. And this is the same concept with your brain and food. Your basic instinct is to eat the foods you're familiar with. But if you work on eating the healthy foods first and be prepared and fill your tummy up with those foods, then you are distracting your brain. And by the time you are done with those healthy foods, you may not even have much room for the comfort foods, and you'll simply be too full to eat. Now, if you do this every time you decide you want a snack or you want to eat a full meal, you can more successfully change your eating pattern. Number 4 is to make sure you have a diversity of new foods so that your brain doesn't get bored. Diversity is the key to getting more nutrients, avoiding collecting toxins, and keeping your brain entertained. Now, processed food companies know this, and that's why M&Ms are different colors. They don't taste any different. I've tried all of them and let every single one slowly melt in my mouth as a kid. There's no difference in smell or taste if you close your eyes. But I ate more when I had rainbow M&Ms and less when it was just one solid color. The rainbow ones were simply more fun to eat. And the same thing happens when it comes to like Chex mixes. There's a whole bunch of different shapes and textures, but in the end, they're just carbohydrates with sugar and salt. But at a party, you may serve both of these foods to give your guests options so they don't get bored. And if you apply this science to healthy foods, you will simply eat more healthy foods. For example, if you gave me a bowl of kale, that's pretty boring even for me. But if you added something soft like avocados, something crunchy like almond slivers, something sweet like apple cubes, something colorful like grated carrots or chopped bell peppers, something spicy like chopped red onions, and something savory like sauteed mushrooms, well, that's going to be a party in my mouth, satisfying my brain and nourishing my body. I definitely would eat that kale salad drizzled with balsamic vinegar. I get bored very easily with the same old routine and the same old food. And I remember how monotonous my dorm meals used to taste in college, and my friends would rather eat a cup of noodles than dorm foods after a few weeks of living there. Number 5, be careful when you go out. Go prepared and actually eat before you leave, because this way you're not tempted to eat the fun party foods and overeat at restaurants. Because when you're hungry, you tend to make irrational decisions, and oftentimes you end up making poor food choices. And the other problem is you're going to be less able to control portion size. Let's face it, celebratory foods are usually not healthy. When someone makes a food for you, it tastes better because usually these professional chefs, they have the right amount of sugar, salt, and fat that spikes your dopamine. Every coffee shop, donut shop, fast food, and restaurant is guaranteed to serve you at least 2 of the 3 key ingredients combined in some food. And another addictive ingredient I would add is flour, which essentially turns into pure sugar. But if you satisfy your brain before you leave the house when you're not hungry, you will be able to make choices that are better for your health. And it's going to be easier to walk away from unhealthy choices. However, if you find yourself often in a rush and out of time to prepare or pack your own food, then try number 6 and give yourself some rules to eat when you go out. It's easier to make rules on what to avoid when other people serve it. And one common ingredient to avoid that has been shown to help reduce weight and reduce diabetes is to be gluten-free, even if you're not sensitive and don't have an allergy to gluten. Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. And the most common grain found in junk food is wheat. And you're going to find wheat products sold as crackers, cookies, in donut shops, bakeries, in coffee shops, pizza shops, sandwich shops, and fast food places. People with celiac disease or those with gluten sensitivity, they actually can have a myriad of GI symptoms when they eat gluten-containing grains or gluten-contaminated foods. And these symptoms can include diarrhea, bloating, abdominal pain, and even constipation. Of course, if you have any of those symptoms, keeping a food diary is helpful, and then bringing that diary to your physician can help you figure out if you do have sensitivities. Ironically, there are also many people who have no symptoms but actually have celiac disease. And if they don't get tested, they eventually may have symptoms. A simple blood test called tissue transglutaminase IgA antibody is very sensitive to diagnose celiac disease. Avoiding gluten products is critical for those with celiac because gluten triggers chronic inflammation starting from the gut. Now, you can also have allergies to other wheat proteins such as albumin, globulins, and gliadins. And some people get a skin rash called dermatitis herpetiformis from eating wheat. Now, people with eczema and asthma, they're more prone to food allergies. In fact, oftentimes the food allergy probably started in the gut and then it caused respiratory and skin conditions. And again, a food diary is super helpful to help people figure out what their body can tolerate. Now, many people who avoid gluten-containing grains, they eat a lot of rice since rice is gluten-free. In fact, in the 1800s, rice-heavy diets was a treatment for celiac disease. And because of World War II during the Dutch famine, when bread was unavailable, an astute Dutch pediatrician noticed that kids stopped dying of celiac disease. And that's when he started advocating for a wheat-free diet. Now today, 90% of processed carbohydrates are wheat-based. And if you're struggling with your health, even if you don't have celiac or gluten sensitivities, consider incorporating some gluten-free days in a week to improve your weight and reduce your risk of diabetes, both of which are diseases of carbohydrate intolerance. Oftentimes, the first signs of diabetes are in the bathroom, as people will feel the need to pee often, especially at night. And during the day, you're going to feel more tired and more thirsty. But you won't know whether or not you have diabetes until you check your blood sugar. And when you find your glucose abnormally high, then that is diabetes. You definitely should see a doctor if you have any of these symptoms, as they may be a sign of carbohydrate intolerance or frank diabetes. Now, if you have insulin resistance, of course, if you stop eating carbohydrates, you won't have those symptoms. But life isn't so easy as eating carbohydrates or not eating carbohydrates, as you may be trading one disease for another. So soda, fruit juice, yams, beans, and oats are all carbohydrates, but they're all very different from each other. The latter 3 whole foods, unlike chemically synthesized soda, are actually good for your health, even for people with diabetes. Whole foods have thousands of other nutrients that people can't bottle in a pill or put in a drink and make money because the natural food is so much better and so much cheaper. And most people think it's good to eat complex carbohydrates like noodles and bread when they think about eating good carbohydrates. But those aren't actually good carbohydrates. Good carbohydrates are found in whole foods like sweet potatoes, fruits like berries, and black beans that retain its original fiber matrix. So if you eliminate all carbohydrates like those on a ketogenic diet, then you would be missing out on the beneficial phytonutrients and fiber in natural whole foods that are healthy for your body. And of course, if you ate a plant-based ketogenic diet, then that is so much healthier than those on an animal-based ketogenic diet or Atkins diet. Now, the other problem with how some address insulin resistance or diabetes is that they have the wrong root cause. In fact, contrary to popular belief, the root cause of carbohydrate intolerance is not carbohydrates. You heard me correctly. Eating carbohydrates doesn't increase insulin resistance unless you are overeating processed carbohydrates. In fact, people with type 1 diabetes use less insulin on a high carbohydrate diet. However, they would get heart disease and kidney failure over time because they would get more insulin resistance from accumulating fat. This is because excess carbohydrate turns into fat. And basically, excess calories from any source can turn into fat, which can accumulate in muscle cells. It's called intramyocellular lipid, which has been proven by infusing fat in people and watching it accumulate in muscle tissue on an MRI. When fat gets inside muscles, it makes the muscles ignore insulin. Muscles are supposed to remove excess blood sugar when insulin is present. And when it doesn't do its job, you have high blood sugars that then stick onto proteins to change your metabolism, increase inflammation, and suppress your immune system. Now, there is more roads to get to insulin resistance. You can also eat excess saturated fat to cause the same problem. In fact, when you can't eat, your medical doctor can give you fats intravenously as a part of total parenteral nutrition, TPN, which is well known to cause a fatty liver, even though we have calculated exactly the nutrition that you need. Now, fatty liver is the beginning of insulin resistance. So, saturated fats cause a double whammy in your muscle and your liver. And what's even worse, saturated fats can also impair the pancreas to secrete insulin. And when the pancreas doesn't work, that's super duper bad. That is the only organ that makes insulin. And when the pancreas burns out, then you would need to receive injections of insulin to live. So high saturated fat in the blood, whether that is from a high-fat animal-based diet or a ketogenic diet or alcohol or excess sugar and refined carbohydrates, these are all ways to convert those nutrients into fat, leading to insulin resistance. And this has been well known for over a century that carbohydrate intolerance skyrockets when you eat high fat. And most people who get diabetes eat both a high fat and a high processed carbohydrate diet called the standard American diet. So if you can get rid of half the problem, your symptoms will improve. But have you really solved the root cause? This is one reason why I don't believe the ketogenic diet is healthy, despite the fact that you can reduce your blood sugars, improve your hemoglobin A1C numbers because you reduce your blood sugars, and improve your fatty liver simply because you are eating less food. And you can achieve this by fasting, counting calories, going vegan, etc. Except, can you keep it up for life and will it achieve longevity? In fact, there is no perfect diet, but some diets are worse than others, and you can miss so many nutrients on a ketogenic diet. And there are shades of a better ketogenic diet, but they are all predominantly 80% fat. So if you're eating a high protein diet, that's not a ketogenic diet, as your body will convert proteins into carbohydrate, which then prevents you from going into ketosis. However, the quality and source of your protein can still make a difference in your risk of eventually developing diabetes. And the more animal protein you eat, the higher your risk of diabetes for any diet. Avoiding carbohydrates for an insulin-resistant person is similar to avoiding nuts for someone who is allergic to nuts. Now, if you're avoiding nuts to prevent allergy symptoms, that doesn't mean you're not allergic to nuts. Those who have mild allergies can have invisible signs but feel tingling in their mouth, whereas those with more severe allergies may have visible signs like swollen lips, and they may feel their throat close up. This is a life-threatening allergic reaction called anaphylaxis, and those individuals need to always carry an epinephrine pen or two around. Now, the invisible symptoms of carbohydrate intolerance begins as fatty liver, and high insulin levels, and then progresses to visible signs of obesity, high blood sugars, and more severe symptoms are peeing at night, being tired, and even longer and higher blood sugars. And the most severe symptoms are end organ damage, such as a stroke, a heart attack, or kidney failure. Any diet that removes processed foods with fat and carbohydrates will improve these symptoms of carbohydrate intolerance and help you lose weight, reduce blood sugars, and reduce fat in your liver. The longer you can eliminate processed carbohydrates and excess fats, the better your results. Therefore, people who try to incorporate gluten-free days have a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, probably because they're removing processed foods, which is mostly processed refined flour added to sugar and fat. But if you don't eat carbohydrates, does this mean you have reversed insulin resistance and fixed the carbohydrate tolerance problem? I don't think so, but the only way you'll really know is if you challenge your body with glucose. And this is why the glucose tolerance test is a gold standard to diagnose diabetes in pregnant women, because the stakes are pretty high if we're wrong. There is a greater risk of miscarriage, low blood sugars called hypoglycemia, and a greater risk for C-sections, as well as neonatal intensive care unit admissions. Now, kids who are born via C-section, they don't perform as well in school, and they have more colds compared to kids who are vaginally delivered. Now, number 7 is to be your own CEO of health and take charge by writing out a schedule and game plan. Make an appointment with yourself to eat. Think about your work. And would you work harder if you own your company, or would you work harder if you are just an employee? Most people would work harder if they own their own company. And as a CEO, it's important to have a written short-term and long-term goals to grow your company. So you are your own CEO of your health. And if you write it down, it counts. You can see it. You can follow it. It's just like a startup. You're going to have so many ideas from so many people. And if you're a startup and if you listen to the wrong expert, you can potentially go bankrupt. And this is the same with your health. And that's why it's important to not just follow any influencer on social media, but you should still listen to different viewpoints and then confirm these ideas with history. Look at civilizations that have been eating those dietary patterns and foods for generations. Don't follow cultures who have gone extinct or are in tiny numbers. This is why I am skeptical of many new products and dietary patterns that are less than 100 years old and invented by people in my lifetime. Dr. Atkins, I remember he had this popular ketogenic diet when I was growing up, but the guy died at 72. He had a history of heart attack. He had congestive heart failure, and he weighed 258 pounds on his death certificate. He didn't even make it to the average age Americans live supplemented with pills. Now, I even remember vividly trying one of his Atkins bars, and I thought it tasted horrible. And that's why I talk about history and look at how nutrients were discovered, because people tend to forget history and make the same mistakes over and over. Nutritional deficiencies happen all the time because no diet is perfect. But eating a diversity of whole foods helps tremendously to buffer many preventable deficiencies and diseases. For example, in the 1800s, thousands of people in Asia died because they were thiamine deficient. Their diet centered on polished rice, basically white rice. White rice is still a popular staple around the world because it's tasty, but it's really not that nutritious. Animals have helped humanity improve our dietary quality, not by eating animals, but by giving animals our diets to eat and to see what happens. So chickens fed the same rice diet also died. And when the chickens were given the rice husks to eat, they survive. So processing rice removes thiamine in the husk, which is necessary for humans and animals to live. This is how thiamine was discovered, and the person who discovered it won a Nobel Prize. This is why eating whole food like brown rice is much more nutritious than eating processed foods like white rice. Today, I really almost never hear people talk about thiamine, even though many people are still lacking thiamine. And if you have any of these conditions, you are at high risk of not having enough thiamine. And in the beginning, you may just feel tired. Thiamine is essential for life, for your body to make energy. It affects your mental health, your immune health, and your mitochondrial health. When you don't have enough thiamine, your memory will falter, your vision will fail, your energy will fade, your muscles will grow weak, your gut will be irritable, and you will have more pain and skin problems. After about 4 weeks of this, more serious symptoms come about, which you will literally have brain failure, a condition known as Wernicke's encephalopathy, and heart failure, a condition called beriberi. This is a reason why people die when they fast from food. Most of us carry calories to last for months, but you can't use those calories. You can't convert them to energy without thiamine. Thiamine is so important that governments got the processed food companies to fortify flour and rice with thiamine. That is why cereals have thiamine. That's why flours have thiamine. But the kicker is the more you process your flour with heat, the less thiamine you will get, and the more sugar and flour you eat, the more thiamine you need. It would actually be healthier to eat a bowl of whole grain brown rice with thiamine as a supplement than Rice Krispies that come with supplemental thiamine. But thiamine is also not supplemented in popular sugary drinks. And by the way, if you are thiamine deficient, your blood also becomes more acidic. So if you want to have a sharp memory on your health journey, make sure you're getting enough thiamine daily. And another thing to do is to nourish your brain by learning something new every day, which is number 8. It really could be anything as long as it does not involve cooking unhealthy ingredients. Because the more you expose yourself to foods you shouldn't eat, the more you will long to eat them. However, learning how to cook with healthy foods, learning how to garden healthy foods, reading books about nutrition and cooking with healthy foods, or teaching yourself something new are all ways that you can nourish your brain to help you along this journey. And this is because when you learn, you get dopamine. And this substitutes the dopamine release that you're getting from unhealthy foods. So when you desire unhealthy foods, those are hormones in your body at work. So you can't just remove the desire of unhealthy foods and not replace that dopamine high. You're going to want dopamine, so you may revert back to your old ways. And eating healthy foods just is not going to do it. So a piece of cabbage will never stimulate the same amount of hormones that a chocolate pastry will drive unless that cabbage is coated in chocolate. And I know what that desire feels like because I used to sell chocolate candy bars at school as a kid. And I was my best customer. I remember one day I ate one candy bar and it feels so good. I was in my mom's living room and opened the box to get another bar and realized that there were only 5 bars left. So I decided to eat all of them right then and there. As I grew older, I noticed that my addiction to sugar was always lower when my time was filled with different ways of learning. And, I spent most of my life learning as a student. By learning, I was actually creating dopamine stimulating activities. I pride myself on being a professional student with years of experience in taking tests, and I love it. It does have that dopamine drive for me. Health is a lifelong learning process. And I love to learn. And as I learn, I'm going to share it with all of you. Now, number 9 is to have realistic expectations on this health journey. Now, many of us expect to lose weight super quickly to fit in some dress. But the quicker you lose weight, the quicker you will lose your health because your body needs time to adjust. If you overstress your brain and body, you're going to feel terrible and then you're going to want to quit. I tried several unhealthy diets when I was younger and have met many people who have tried like low carb and ketogenic diets, losing 10 pounds in a couple of weeks, only to end up in the hospital with pneumonia and muscle loss. Now, the problem with the ketogenic diet and low carb diets is that the first 4 pounds of weight loss is water and muscle. Neither one is good. Dehydration is the easiest and worst thing you can do to your body because everything in your body needs water to work well. As we age, we need to work harder to keep up our muscle mass because you will normally lose muscle every year over 40. So this is why I don't encourage going on the balance. A healthier marker of your progress is your pant size. If your pants are getting looser at the waist, that's a great sign you're on the right track because you're losing visceral fat. Not even plastic surgeons can remove visceral fat that is stuck inside your abdominal cavity. That fat is metabolically active and is causing chronic inflammation and insulin resistance. Now, one thing that is so easy to do is to make sure that you are sleeping well. And number 10, did you know that sleep affects your weight? I remember those sleepless nights when I'd snack and stay awake, and then the next day I would make poor food choices all day long. The lack of sleep also slows your metabolism, it increases insulin resistance, and it reduces your immunity. In fact, on days you don't sleep well, you'll notice that your blood sugars will be higher. Your antibody response to shots will also be blunted. So don't bother to get shots on days you don't sleep well. Sleep before midnight to get the best rest. And when you're well rested, it can help you lose weight and control your food cravings. If you want to learn more about how to reduce your sugar cravings, check out the next video.